I'm gonna live so God can use me anywhere, Lord, anytime. I'm gonna live so God can use me anywhere, Lord, anytime. Work so God can use me anywhere, Lord, anytime, anytime. I'm gonna work so God can use me anywhere, Lord, anytime. I'm gonna live so sing. God can use me. God can use anywhere, me anywhere, Lord, anytime, anytime. I'm gonna live so God can use me anywhere, Lord, anytime, anytime. I'm gonna pray so God can use me anywhere, Lord, anytime, anytime. I'm gonna pray so God can use me anywhere, Lord, anytime, anytime. I'm gonna sing so God can use me anywhere, Lord, anytime, anytime. I'm gonna sing so God can use me anywhere, Lord, anytime. Okay, everyone, and all God's people said,
Amen.
we're going to sing He's Got the Whole World in His Hands. He's got the whole world in His hands. He's got the whole wide world in His hands. He's got the whole world in His hands. He's got the whole world in His hands. She's got you and me, brother, in her hands. She's got you and me, sister, in her hands. She's got everyone here in her hands. She's got the whole world in her hands. She's got the sun and the rain in His hands. He's got the sun and the stars in His hands. He's got the wind and the clouds in His hands. He's got the whole world in His hands. You're gonna bloom where you plant you. In ministry, you're gonna bloom where she plants you. In ministry, you're gonna bloom where she plants you. In ministry, she's got the whole world in her hands. Woo! Oh, it's God in the Bible. God in the Bible. God of the Bible, God of the gospel, hope seen in Jesus, hope yet to come. You are our center, daylight or darkness, freedom or prison. You are our home. Precious morning, sure as the sunrise, God always faithful. You do not change. Precious the morning, sure as the sunrise, God always faithful. You do not change. I invite you to sing God in our struggles. God in our struggles, God in our hunger, suffering with us, taking our part. Still you empower us, Mother in spirit, leading, sustaining from your own heart. Precious the morning, sure as the sunrise, God always faithful, you do not change. Precious the morning, sure as the sunrise, always faithful. You do not change. Those without status, those who are nothing, you have made royal, gifted with rights, chosen as partners, midwives of justice, birthing new systems, lighting new lights. Fresh as the morning, sure as the sunrise, God always faithful, you do not change. Fresh as the morning, sure as the sunrise, God always faithful, you do not change. Not by your finger, not by your anger, will our world order change in one day, but by your people, fearless and faithful, small paper lanterns lighting the way. Fresh as the morning, sure as the sunrise, God always faithful, you do not change. Fresh as the morning, sure as the sunrise, God always faithful, you do not change. Hope we must carry, shining and certain, through all our turmoil, terror and loss, binding us gladly, one to the other, till our world changes, facing the cross. Fresh as the morning, sure as the sunrise, God always faithful, you do not change. Fresh as the morning, sure as the sunrise, God always faithful, you do not change.
Pat, folks, if Pat Morrison, if you see Pat, could we borrow you up here for 1 second? No, Dan is looking for him.
They're like the microphones are too close. Oh, that's why. Except for you guys.
No, it's okay. Sorry, I was mixed up because I thought you were going to do that in the music before this. Okay, so we don't touch it, but it's time to stop.
You have 30 seconds to get to your seat. Hillary, Dave, 30 seconds. $15 seconds. Carrie. Marilyn. I have a lot of power with this microphone.
Get you to take your seats. I'm delighted to present one of our theme speakers for this conference, Jeremy Diaz, who is no stranger to folks in Algoma Presbytery, for he grew up in Sault Ste. Marie. And Jeremy is the executive director. How do we properly say? Oh, here it is. The Canadian Centre for Gender and Sexual Diversity. Jeremy has used some rough patches in his life to do some great things and some great work. And I'm delighted to have Jeremy here with us to share his experiences and his hopes and his wisdom around gender diversity issues in our country. Thank you, Jeremy.
Thank you, Joyce. Thank you, Carol Ann. And of course, thank you to the very Reverend Gary Patterson. It is such a pleasure to be here. As many of you know, I'm actually not from London, and I'm actually not originally from Algoma. I'm actually from over here. And when I was in grade 5, I lived not in Calgary or Red Deer or Edmonton. I lived in like the north, the winter, the cold, and the dark, and just about here was my house. And when I was in the end of my elementary school, my mom came into my bedroom one day and she tapped me on the shoulder and she was like, "Wake up." And I was like, "What is it?" And she's like, "Jeremy, wake up. Wake up. We're moving to Northern Ontario." And I was like, "What?" And she's like, "Pay attention, stupid, we're moving." And I was like, no, I got that part. I understand that we're moving. Why? Why are we moving to Northern Ontario? And my mom looked at me and she's like, "Jeremy, shut up." So overnight, my grade 8 year turned into my last year in my small town. I said goodbye to all my friends. I packed up every box I owned, and I got into the back of my car with my dog, and we drove for 3 days to Sault Ste. Marie. And Sault Ste. Marie was an interesting place to grow up because I'd come from a totally different place, and over the summer, I didn't have any friends. And over the summer, I didn't want to go to my neighbor's house and be like, "Would you be my friend?" So over the summer, I spent a lot of time online talking to my friends back home, and I spent a lot of time unpacking boxes with my mom, and I spent a lot of time in the woods behind my house because we didn't live inside of town, we lived just outside of town, and there was a giant forest behind my house. So I would go and I'd play Pokemon, and for many of you, you know that Pokemon Go is very popular on your iPhone. However, we were really poor, so we didn't have a DS or a Wii or a Nintendo, so I'd go out into the forest with a baseball and the squirrels, and I'd be like, "Catch!" Now here's the thing that you should know about squirrels. When squirrels see a ball and a squirrel sees you, they run away. And the ball hits the tree, and the ball comes back at your face with a vengeance. So I'd come home with like a bruise on my forehead, and my mom would be like, "Oh God, Jeremy, you're such a loser." So when grade 9 happened, I was really excited. On my very first day of school in grade 9, I was so excited because I really wanted to go to school, and I really wanted to make new friends, and I really wanted to meet new people. I'd spent the last 2 months pretty much by myself, and I just wanted to make a friend, like a real friend. On my very first day of school, I put my books into my locker, I had a brand new backpack, I had a Charizard poster, and I was excited. I was full of hope. And as I got my stuff organized, this really tall guy came over and tapped me on the shoulder, and I turned around and I said, "Good morning." And he screamed down the hallway, "Hey everybody, there's a brown kid in the school." And I was like, uh-oh, spaghetti-o. All of a sudden, everyone in the hallway started crowding around us, and they started whispering stuff. They're like, "There's going to be a fight, and someone's going to get killed." And I was like, "Oh my gosh, that's me." So I abandoned everything I owned, and I ran to the principal's office, and I closed his door behind me, and I'm like, "Oh my gosh, these people are going to kill me, and you wouldn't believe what happened." And very calmly, he got up from his desk, and he put his hand on my shoulder, and he said, "Boys will be boys, just suck it up." And I got into the hallway thinking I was actually going to die. But as you know, I made it, because I'm here. My favorite is when someone's like, "What happened next?" I'm like, surprise. On my second day of school, I went to my English class, and our teacher told us to get into groups to do a project. When nobody picked me, I went up to my teacher and I said, hey, do you know where I could work or who I could work with? And she said, just do the project by yourself. And over the next 2 weeks, nobody really talked to me or hung out with me. It was really hard to make friends, and so I used to hang out under a tree with my books, and I would sit and read all by myself. I did meet 3 really amazing people, Ron, Harry, and Hermione. For those of you who don't know, that's a Harry Potter joke, and they weren't real friends, they were people who lived in books. But 2 weeks after school started, after Ron was chasing a dragon and Harry was defeating the evil Lord Voldemort, it started raining. And I grabbed my books and I grabbed my lunch and I went into my English classroom to read and eat by myself. Sitting in my classroom all alone, I closed the window and I just sat there, finished the chapter of my book, put the book into my desk, and my desk was soaking wet. So I pulled out my hand instantly, and all of a sudden, this guy who was hiding behind my teacher's desk jumped up, and he threw a lit match into my desk, and the desk exploded in my face. I jumped back immediately. He ran out of the classroom, and my teacher came into the class. She pulled the fire blanket off the wall, and she just wrapped up my desk. She opened the windows, and the smoke billowed out of the classroom, and I just stood there. She grabbed my desk, she replaced it with another, and in shock, I still just stood there. She told me to sit at the new desk, and I asked her, are you going to go after the kid? And she said, these things happen. And the bell went off, and people came into the classroom, and the kids beside me started complaining about the smell in the classroom, and I turned around to say something to them, but before I could say anything, one of the kids said, Miss Smith is smoking by the window again. And that was it. It was over. I came home, my mom asked me how my day was, I told her the truth, and she called the principal, and he said, don't worry about it, we already got him a new desk. He hung up on my mom, and the next day at breakfast, I pushed my omelet from one side of my plate to the other with no intention of eating it. My mom saw how upset I was, and she said, I have a solution. And I said, what is it? And she said, we're gonna go to the mall. Which was kind of exciting, because what that really meant was we were gonna get into my car, we were gonna drive from our area of town to the other, and we were gonna go to Zellers. For those of you who don't know what Zellers is, this is Walmart, but like nicer. We go to Zellers, my mom buys me new shoes, and I've got a smile on my face. And as we walk through the station mall, I feel a little bit lighter. I feel a little happier. I feel a little better. And we get to the ice cream store, and I look at my mom and I say thank you. We're in line for ice cream because nothing makes anything better than chocolate mint, as you all know. Thank you. I appreciate that. And we're waiting in line for ice cream, and this 3-year-old kid runs up to us and starts pulling on my pants. He starts screaming. He starts yelling, and I look down at this kid, and I'm like, what's the matter with you? And his mother comes over, and she picks up her son, and the kid stops screaming immediately. The kid, in an utter state of calmness, says, Mom, what's that? And I'm like, are you kidding me? You don't have National Geographic or YouTube? I'm Russell Peters. I'm famous. The kid and the mom, they walk away. But when the mom exits the ice cream store, she leans back. And she says loud enough for every patron and every person working in the store to hear, she says, son, don't talk to them. They're bad people. Leave them alone. Silence falls over the ice cream store. We get to the front of the line. We order our chocolate mint. We sit down, and my mother and I have nothing to say to each other. And so we just eat in silence. When we come home from the mall, my dad's like, how was your day at the mall? And we say nothing, and we sit in silence. Sunday rolls around, and I go to church. As some of you may know, I'm a recovering Catholic. I was worried that there was going to be no applause or no laughter. But then I realized I wasn't talking to Catholics. Bong-ching. Okay, all right, moving on. And I sat in the back of my church, and I listened, and I prayed, and I cried. And at the end of Mass, my priest came up to me, still sitting in the back in the pews, and said, what's the matter? And I said, Father, I'm confused. I don't really belong here. And he said, there's a book you should read. And he handed me one of the Bibles, and I walked out. And I read. And then Monday rolled around, and I came to school, and I'm standing in the middle of my school, and all I could think of was my desk and this 3-year-old kid. And I thought maybe, just maybe people at my school had never met someone like me before. Maybe if they got to know me, maybe I'd have a friend. So I decided to volunteer for student council, and they let me. And I got to be in charge of decorating the gymnasium for the dance. And I had this really amazing idea. My amazing idea was to fill a room about this size with leaves from all of the parks from all over the town. So me and my dad in the back of his car went to all of the parks and picked up all of the raked leaves, shoved them into the back of the truck, and then just before the dance, we dumped them into the gymnasium. And then when you walked in, there was 2 or 3 or 4 foot of leaves everywhere. It was kind of like a giant leaf pile, and it was amazing. And everyone loved it. And after the dance was over, people went home and they were talking about it. And me and the rest of student council were cleaning up, and I was kind of happy. All of a sudden, that is when it happened. She walked over to me to talk to me. Now you have to realize 2 things. No one at the school has ever walked over to me to talk to me. No one has ever initiated a conversation, and I realized that in this moment, I could be making my very first friend. You have to also realize something else. She is not just anyone. She is Rachel Monroe, and you all know Rachel Monroe because you all went to school with someone like Rachel Monroe. She was pretty, and she was tall, and she was popular. She had long hair, and she flipped it back and forth, and everyone thought she was so cool. And did I mention Rachel Monroe was also the president of student council? And did I also mention that she was single? Rachel comes over to me to talk to me, and she flips her hair back, and she says, "Hey." And I'm like, "Hi." And she looks me up and down, and she's like, "Hey." And I'm like, "Hi." And she says, "Congratulations on the dance," and I say, "Thank you." And we shake hands, and I say, "There's no I in team, and if you ever need a hand, I'm always here to help." And then she looks back at her friends, and they nod at her, and she nods back. And then she looks at me square in the face, and she says, "I didn't think your people could do anything else besides make rice and curry." I drop my rake, and it falls to the floor. I walk away from her, and she runs up to me, and she's like, "Where are you going?" And I'm like, "I'm going home." And she's like, "Why?" And she's like, "It was just a joke." And I'm like, "Listen, I come to school, and people make jokes. I go to class, and people make jokes. I go to lunch, and people make jokes. I go back to class, and people make more jokes. Then I come to the dance, and you make a joke, and honestly, it hurts my feelings on the inside. So I'm going to go home." She looks at me, and she grabs me by the shoulder, and she says, "I'm sorry. I had no idea what I said would hurt your feelings, and I promise I will never make a joke like that again." She hugs me, and in that moment, I make my very first friend. And a few minutes later, I smile. Because I forgave her. After I made friends with Rachel, I made 5 more friends, so if you're counting, I am now at 6. 6 friends. My Facebook is exploding. I'm getting so many likes. It's amazing. I'm so happy. So for second semester, grade 9, me and my friends switch all of our classes around, and we decide to take drama together in 4th period. And drama is amazing because in English, French, and science, people make fun of me, and people call me names, and people push me around. But in drama, I sit down, and my friends sit beside me. In drama, people talk to me. In drama, people pick me for groups, and they want to know how I feel. And that friendship is like a force field, and it protects me from all of the bullies and the mean people out there. And one day, as the weather warms up, and as winter leaves, and as spring starts to bloom, our teacher says we can practice Hamlet outside. And every group races outside for period, and we, me and my 6 friends, the 7 of us, stay inside the theater, and we practice Hamlet on the stage. Emily takes the front of the stage, and she says, "To be or not to be." And I look at my 6 friends, the only 6 friends I have in the whole world, and I'm like, "I'm gay." And they stare at me in awkward silence, exactly how you're doing it. And then Elizabeth gets up, and she walks away. Emily's like, "Where did Liz go?" And I'm like, "I don't know." I met Liz 2 weeks after the dance had finished. I was walking my dog, she was gardening, and my dog started sniffing her, and she's like, it's okay, I love dogs. And then she made out with my dog, which is super gross because girls have cooties, and now my dog has cooties. I'm kidding, girls don't have cooties. But she looks at me, and we become friends. She comes over to my house every morning before school, and we hang out, and having someone to talk to every morning was a great way to start the day. One day, my mom made a giant breakfast: eggs, toast, waffles, cereals, pancakes, everything you can imagine, and she goes to work. I clean up, and I couldn't eat everything, so I put most of it in the fridge, but my mom had poured me a bowl of cereal, so I was throwing it down the garburator because you can't keep cereal. And Liz walks in, and she looks at me, and she looks at the bowl of cereal, she sees it going down the sink, and she starts crying, and I'm like, dude, why are you crying? It is 7 o'clock in the morning. It is too early to cry. And she says, I haven't eaten for 3 days. Now, I felt bad for wasting a bowl of cereal, but I felt worse that we'd been sitting together for lunch for the last 3 days, and I didn't notice that she wasn't eating. I put down the bowl, and I asked her what was wrong, and she said, my parents lost their job at the steel mill, and we can't afford to pay for rent and for food, so we made a decision as a family. I got some pancakes out of the fridge, I warmed them up, she ate, and we didn't talk about it. But over the next few weeks, I would throw food into her locker, and I wouldn't say anything. 3 weeks later, she handed me a note, and on the note it said, you're awesome. And I thought that actually she was awesome, because it takes courage for someone to share their weaknesses. It takes courage to ask for help. It takes courage to receive help. And she inspired me not to judge others, because she taught me through the whole experience that the truth is you can think you know someone based on how they act or what they look like or who they hang out with, but the truth is that every single person we interact with has a story, has an experience, has something magical inside of them. She taught me not to judge other people, and I think she made me a better person. And for that, I think she's awesome. So, I'm on the stage. I just told my 7 friends in the whole world and on Facebook that I'm gay. And my very best friend in the world just walked out. Em is like, where did Liz go? And I'm like, I don't know. And then over the announcements, over the intercom, Elizabeth tells everyone in the entire school that I'm gay. And I go home for lunch. I don't come back to school till the next day, and when I get back to school, I'm at my lockers, and everyone's talking about it, and everyone's whispering about it, and everyone shared it. I go to my class, and someone calls me a fag, and everyone laughs, including my teacher, and when her and I make eye contact, she tells everyone to just be quiet. After that, I went to math, and on my math class, my teacher wrote a question on the board. I'm the only person in class to raise a hand. I actually know the answer, but he ignores it, and when my arm gets sore, I just put it down. At lunch, I go to eat with my friends in the cafeteria. We had a table in the corner in the back by the windows. It was awesome, and I'm sitting there, and no one shows up. So I just sip on my V8 and my peanut butter and jelly sandwich, and I say nothing. But I went to a small school with a big population, and before I knew it, every single table had filled up with people, and all of a sudden, I'm sitting completely by myself. But it wasn't going to last, no. The entire football team came out of the cafeteria line, saw one sort of empty table, and decided to sit with me. Go Eagles. The captain of the football team is sitting straight across from me. His name is Mike, and he's eating 3 hamburgers that he has squished into one. The grease is all over his face. Please don't judge him. You know people like this. Some of you are people like this. I just saw you eat. Steve looks at me, puts down his hamburger, and says, "Hey, aren't you gay?" I reach into my pocket, and I say, "Yes, I am. Glitter." I'm kidding, I didn't do that. I really want to, though. Go back in time and do that. Oh, that'd be so amazing, right? What a great movie moment, right? Like, that would be amazing. No, that's not what happened. Okay, so this is what happened. "Hey, aren't you gay?" Yes. All of a sudden, everyone at this table stops talking, and they stare at me like I'm a unicorn. Steve wipes his mouth, and he says, "Listen, I got nothing against you people, as long as you don't hit on me." And I'm like, "Dude, I would never hit on you. You're not pretty enough." Steve looks at me and he's like, what do you mean I'm not pretty? I can be pretty. And I'm like, dude, it's not that you're not pretty. It's that you're not gay. I'm gay. I like other gay people. Steve says, how'd you become gay? This, for me, is surprising because if you read my bio, which I encourage you to do at some point during the weekend, I actually get to do thousands of workshops like this every day. And it surprises me that even in 2018, this is an incredibly popular question that I get on a regular basis. I look at Steve and I decide to tell him the truth. I look at him and I say, well, Steve, one day my mom accidentally bought the wrong cereal. She got the magically delicious kind. Steve looks at me and says, wait a second, Lucky Charms makes you gay? And I'm like, Steve, of course it does. It's got a gay unicorn on the box, a giant rainbow. What more warning do you need? For a hot 5 minutes, he totally thought it was true. And then I said, I'm joking. The entire football team stops talking again, and they stare at me, and they said, well, how did you become gay? And I said, well, when I lived over here beside North and Dark, I used to go to Catholic school. And I was, sorry, thought you were laughing. Anyway, I used to go to Catholic school, and in my Catholic school, I went to the library one day, and in the library one day, I was grabbing a book off the shelf, and my best friend came up to me and he kissed me on the cheek. And it was super romantic, because the choir in the room next door started singing, and we thought it was a sign from God. And we fell in love. And over the next few weeks and the next few months, we'd hold hands and we'd hang out. We were both altar boys, which means that we got nicer, more plush seats than the rest of the poor people who had to sit in the wooden pews. And we'd hold hands underneath our robes, and we thought we were magical. One day we're in the library, and we're so in love, and we're reading books and holding hands underneath the table, and this dude comes up to us, and he's like, are you guys gay? Dan puts down his book, and he looks up, and he says, dude, we're not gay. Being gay is happy. We aren't happy. It's raining outside. We missed recess. We're super sad today. The dude walks away, but Dan looks at me and honestly says, Jer, are we gay? Because I thought we were just in love. And I realized in that moment that I didn't know if I was gay. When I grew up, they didn't mention gay at all in school, except for twice. One day, my science teacher told me that lesbians get breast cancer because they don't do God's will by having children. And one day, my priest had told me that gay men hang out in minivans and wait for you after church. Kind of ironic. So here's the thing. We didn't know if we were gay or not, so we in the library decided to Wikipedia it, and we Wikipedia'd gay, and we realized, oh my God, we're gay. And then I went home, and I was like realizing that I was gay, and I put everything on my phone, and I came to school, and I'm like, dude, we're gay. We got rainbows, we got glitter. Disco belongs to us. In the hallway, Dan looks at me, and he's like, I don't want to be gay. My phone fell out of my hand and smashed on the concrete floor. And at the same moment, my heart slipped out of my chest and fell as well. The pieces fell all over, and I tried to pick them all up, but I don't think I ever got them all. Dan and I had 2 classes together, and even though we sat together in the same bench, he didn't look at me or talk to me ever again. I told all of this to everyone at the table in my cafeteria, the entire football team, and Steve and his friends got up and they all walked away. And after Liz told everyone else in school that I was gay, people made fun of me more and called me names and pushed me around, and I hated going to school. It was always something. Always something. However, in grade 10, something awesome happened. I got a boyfriend, even before Miss Monroe. And his name was Jesse. Jesse didn't go to my school. He went to the arguably indigenous school on the other side of town. He went to White Pines, but he wasn't really indigenous. He wasn't First Nations. He was Métis. And I'm only half Pakistani, so together we're one whole Indian. So funny, right? Love that joke. So you know what happened, right? So he would come over to my house and we'd write jokes together because we thought we were really funny. And we'd hold hands and we'd watch cartoons. And for like an hour after school, we'd be like a normal couple. And it was super fun. And one day we were on the couch holding hands while writing jokes together and watching cartoons. And my mom comes in with a tray of cookies and we didn't hear her. And we were still holding hands. And my mom looks at our hands and she's like, "Do you boys want some?" Oh my God. And she dropped the warm plate of chocolate chip cookies. And you could almost hear the chocolate melting into the carpet. 2 minutes later, my mom calls me from the kitchen. 2 minutes later, I get up. 2 more minutes later, I'm standing between my mother and the knives in the kitchen because I don't want her to grab one and stab me because I'm a Boy Scout and we're always prepared. And I know that's a Star Trek joke. It's funny. It's called visual humor. So here's the thing. My mom, short little Pakistani woman, really pretty, really skinny, but she's short, and she looks up at me and she's like, "Are you the gay?" And I thought, wouldn't it be awesome if I was like the gay, like the only one in the world? Like I'd come to London conference and you'd be like, "The gay is coming. We all need to get our selfies, you know? Be awesome, make a thing out of it." So I told my mom I'm not the gay, but I'm gay. And she's like, "How's it going?" And I'm like, "It's okay." And she went for a really long walk. I went upstairs to my room. Jesse went home. And I'm talking to my friends online, and one of my friends who had moved to Mississauga told me that one of his friends who told his parents he was gay, they kicked him out of the house. So I was scared that my mom would come home with the same idea. So I put my favorite clothes into a bag, and I hid it under my bed. Around 2 o'clock in the morning, I'm listening to Britney Spears, and I'm hiding under the covers, and I'm pretending to sleep, and my mom finally comes home. She walks up the stairs to my room, she walks down the hallway, and she knocks on the door, and she opens it, and I'm still pretending to sleep. She sits on the corner of my bed, and she stares at me like she's trying to figure out this puzzle that has always been in front of her. And she stares at me, and she was thinking, because I asked her later, how did I not know? How could this magic be in front of me? How can this person have existed? How could the secret have been hidden so well? She wakes me up, and I wake up, and she says, "I have a really great idea. I want to make a pink shirt that says, 'I'm the proud gay mom of a proud gay son.'" And I'm like, "Oh, that's awesome, but you're not a proud gay mom. Mom, are you gay? Mom, are you a lesbian?" Without missing a beat, she says, "No, but I can learn. Teach me the ways of your people." I look at my mom and I'm like, "Mom, it doesn't work like that." And she's like, "I know, don't be stupid. I watch Glee. I know about gays and lesbians." So I was really lucky. We talked about it. We talked about all the famous LGBTQ people we knew, and my mom went to bed, and before she went to bed, she said, "I love you," and that meant a lot to me. And the next morning, we woke up early and we made breakfast for my family. My brother was the first one to come down. He takes the milk out of the fridge, and he looks at me, and he says, "Do you want some more homo milk, you big homo? 1 glass a day will keep you super gay." My mom, who's chopping up onions for an omelet, points the knife at him and says, "Are you an idiot? He's already gay. He can't be more gay. You're so stupid." My dad is from Nova Scotia. He's taller than me. He's broader than me. He played football his whole life. That's how he got into university. He's really great, and he calls me into the living room, and I sit with him on the couch, and he says, "Your mom says you are gay." And I'm like, "Yep." And he's like, "Look, I'll always love you on one condition. Don't get anyone pregnant." And I'm like, "But Dad, I won't. I'm gay." And he's like, "I know, that's a joke. I'm funny." So, yeah. So after all of that, we had breakfast. We talked about it. Everyone was super cool. My dad and my brother went to play soccer. My mom and I stayed home. We cleaned up. And after we were done cleaning, my mom decides to call up all of my relatives except for my grandmother and tell them that I'm gay. This is what the conversation sounded like. Oh, but before I tell you that, I have to tell you my mom makes really good chocolate chip cookies. The recipe is on my website because we get asked so much. It's really good. You should try it. The trick is icing sugar. Anyway, some of you probably knew that. You're all church ladies. I get it. Some of you are like, church ladies in spirit too. Okay, so where was I going? Oh yeah, so this is what the conversation sounded like. "Hello, my son's gay." "No, not Ellen DeGenerate gay. Gay. And I'm like, and then she's like, "Look, you have 2 choices. You either accept my son's sexual orientation or no cookies for you." This was awesome. It went on for hours. Everyone was cool with, like, they all wanted the cookies, so they were cool with my gayness, except for my Aunt Sheila. Now, my Aunt Sheila is my Holy Communion ambassador. She's the one who confirmed me later on when I continued my patronage to the Catholic Church. And my Aunt Sheila picked up the phone and said, I don't want cookies anymore, and she hung up on my mom. And that day, she stopped talking to me, my mom, my dad, and my brother, even though the last three are still straight. And it breaks my little heart that we've lost this relationship to this really amazing person in my life because I feel responsible, but my mom says I'm not, which I know is only partially not true, but it still hurts my feelings. I love my Aunt Sheila. I see her at Easter and at Thanksgiving and at Christmas and at weddings. And I love her because she's always polite. While she may not have the relationship that I would love with her, she's always been respectful. And I wished that people at my school were more like her, because when I went to school, people were actually mean. In grade 12, I had two agendas, one for my homework and one to record the bullying that people had thrown at me every day. My guidance counselor thought it would be a good idea to document my own personal experiences, to journal them, because then I could tell her about it, and I could share, and I could vent and find some peace or solace, which I never really seemed to. In grade 12, one day, it was raining. It was one of those days where you knew you'd wake up and be a bad day, and I went to school anyway, and as I walked to school, my umbrella breaks, and I get soaking wet, and as I get into my classroom, my vice principal pulls me out and says, someone put graffiti on your locker, and you have to clean it off because the custodian does not want to touch your locker because he doesn't want to catch the gay. So I clean it off without argument because I just don't care, and after I clean off the graffiti, I get back into class, and two kids throw my homework in my face, my homework which was sitting on my teacher's desk, and I don't say anything. I pick up the pieces, I put them into my pocket, and I sit at my desk, and I wait for lunch. And lunch happens, so I go off to the library, print off another copy of homework, staple it, check it, hand it off to my teacher in the staff room, and she says, homework's due at the beginning of class, not at the end. She rips it in half and throws it on the floor and says, this is a life lesson. You're going to learn from this moment. You'll be better prepared next time. And I didn't argue with her. I picked it off the floor. I went up the stairs to my science class because I was wet from the rain and hungry because I skipped lunch to do all of this extra work. And I was tired. I was tired of this. Not this exactly. I mean, this thing didn't happen every single day, but something like this. And I was constantly exhausted, waiting for the next this to happen. As I walked through the hallway down to my science classroom, these two guys walked towards me, and one of them called me a fag, and I turned around to say something, but they just high-fived each other and left. They didn't even look back at me to see the pain that they inflicted. They didn't even look back to see what damage they had caused. They just thought it was one joke, one moment, and they were just about to forget it. For me, it was a moment I would never forget, and that's bullying. For everyone else, it's like one little paper cut, and for me, it's 1,000 that chop my soul up into pieces from the inside out, and they just fall apart. So I picked up the pieces, and I put them into my pocket, and I went into my science classroom, and I sat down, and our teacher put us into groups. I got put with Ron and this random girl who I never met, and Ron starts making fun of me. He's calling me names, and everyone in class hears, and nobody says anything. I didn't say anything either, because I tried everything. I tried walking away, I tried fighting back, I tried telling teachers, and nothing ever worked. So I just closed my eyes and I gave up. And in that classroom, I closed my eyes and I wished I didn't live in this small town, and I wished I didn't live in this space, and I just wished I was dead. And all of a sudden, this girl across from me said, stop. And I thought she was talking to the train of thought inside my head. But when I opened my eyes, she was talking to Ron. And with one word, stop, she actually got him to stop. I mean, I'd been telling people to stop my whole life, and they never listened to me, they listened to her. So we blew up our science volcano, we left class early, and I went up to her and I'm like, dude, who are you? And she's like, I'm Jess. And I'm like, why'd you stand up for me? She looks at me and she's like, you're awesome. Which is weird, because when people call you a loser every single day of your life, you just start to believe it. But she said one word, and I felt like a human being again. After we hung out, we went out for coffee after school, and after we went for coffee, we became friends. And when my school didn't let me go to prom with my boyfriend, Jessica cut her hair short, she dressed up like a dude, she rented a pink Cadillac, she showed up with flowers on the seat, and she surprised me and took me to prom. After prom was over, we all went back to Em's house, obviously, and we were watching TV, and we were eating ice cream, and Jess was like, "You should sue your school." And I'm like, "Why?" And she's like, "Teachers make fun of you, and students make fun of you, and no one has ever gotten in trouble for picking on you." So I did. I sued my school and my school board, and 14 years ago, I won Canada's second largest human rights lawsuit. And thank you. Oh, great. Oh, sweet. Good on time. And I won Canada's second largest human rights lawsuit, and I used the money to start the Canadian Centre for Gender and Sexual Diversity and the International Day of Pink. And as many of you know, the second Wednesday in April is the International Day of Pink, and we all wear pink in many of your congregations, and many of your communities, and many of your schools, and many of your workplaces, because we know that a pink shirt does not leap off your chest and stop bullying. Instead, we know that pink reminds us. It reminds us that each one of us has had a bad day. Each one of us has been hurt or disrespected by someone else. Each one of us has seen disrespect and hurt happen, and each one of us, including myself, has hurt someone else. And so we wear pink to remind ourselves and others to choose kindness, to choose love, to choose respect, to choose activism. And it's awesome. Now, you may not know the Canadian Centre for Gender and Sexual Diversity, but we kind of know you. Not only do we run over 1,000 workshops like this in Canada every single year, but we also run 52-day-long LGBTQ youth conferences, where even here in London, we bring queer and trans youth together to have a conversation, to find their community, to find their home. And while you may not know us, we know you. You rebellious, lefty, activist, shit-disturbing troublemakers who are constantly lighting the world on fire, rebuilding it, and lighting it on fire again. You come from a long line of LGBTQ activists. Not just that one over there, but Sherry DeNovo and others who have paved the way for human rights to happen. And we all know that human rights are not voted on in a parliament or a legislature. We know that human rights come from the ground up. When we started the organization 14 years ago, we didn't run 1,000 workshops across Canada every single year. We didn't run 52-day-long workshops. We didn't run 3-week-long conferences. No, we struggled. Me and my friends were just volunteers, and we would call up the schools in Ottawa where I lived, and we would beg them to let us in. We'd beg them to let us talk about queer and trans issues with kids in the classroom, because we knew that the gay kids would benefit from seeing themselves represented in the stories that happened in front. And we knew that the gay kids would benefit from the straight kids in the classroom hearing a message of respect, a message of kindness. 14 years ago was a long time ago, and today we have another problem. We have too many schools calling us and asking us for workshops. We have too many places asking us for help, which is kind of a cool problem to have. And then something really cool happened. I don't know if you know this, but every charity dreams of owning a building. You are fine because you already own your churches, so yeah. You're like, we knew that problem in the 50s. We've been there, done that, bought the building. So every charity dreams of owning a building, and actually 2 months ago, we were very lucky to be gifted 15,000 square feet, which if you want to know is about 6 times the size of this room, maybe 8. But you're probably wondering what me and my ragtag band of misfits are going to do with 15,000 square feet. Well, we're going to build the world's first LGBTQ museum. Thanks. And the reason why we're doing this is because people want to hear LGBTQ culture and LGBTQ stories and LGBTQ experiences. And while I'm building this monstrosity in the nation's capital, it's going to have a practical impact in all of your congregations, because one, you're going to donate a shit ton of money to the project, but two, why are they laughing at me, Gary? I wasn't joking. Okay, right, but two, what we're going to do is we're going to do something called replicable, and it's an academic term. No museum in Canada does it yet, but basically when an exhibition goes up in Ottawa, if you can't make it, don't worry. You can go onto our website, you can click on the exhibition, and you can download every single exhibition piece for free. And then you can print it off on hopefully a color printer, although we will have a black and white option, and you can shove them into frames. And you can remount the whole exhibition in your congregation's community, in the vestiary, in the lobby, in the cafeteria, in the lounge downstairs. If you want, you can even put it on the pulpit. Decorate the altar. And you can help us share the stories, because what we do today is we tell LGBTQ history in an hour or less. But what I think is interesting is across our country, there are people who have broken ground. Do you know that the most successful Canadian politician is actually a United Church minister? Sherry DeNovo, who was elected with some of the highest margins of any politician in our country, passed the most amount of legislation, not even as an opposition party, but as a third party. Did you know that your people, your community, your activists broke the way for churches across our country to be LGBTQ friendly? The word affirm was just a glimmer in someone's eye, and an activist model to bring people together and create safer spaces. And these are the stories that need to be told. These are the stories that need to be shared. And unfortunately, we lose these stories because we don't have a home to put them in. So today, I invite you to come to the center's website after you're done conference and go back to your congregations and back to your friends and back to your communities and tell them to go onto our website. Click the button where it says share your story, and you can share your story. Click on the button that says share your items, and maybe you have the first marriage certificate of a gay couple just in a binder behind somewhere, maybe behind a fridge or something, or holding up a table, and you want to donate it to us because you think that's an awesome story. Maybe you have the first rainbow flag that went up in your congregation. Maybe you have the first banner that you used to march in Pride. Maybe you have the first receipt from the first time your congregation spent money on gay stuff, and you think that Tim Hortons receipt means something to you. Well, if it means something to you, it means something to us. And we want to share that story. Also, while I'm at it, the project will cost $10 million. And while the government will probably pay for about 6 of it, we do need to raise about 4. So we hope that if you consider donating $2 to $3 a month, I know that's like only 50,000 Canadians, then you can perhaps help us make this dream happen. I do have time to take some questions, actually a whole 11 minutes, to take some questions and or let you get early into your schedule. Either way, I'm totally fine. But I would love, I would love to hear if you have any questions for me, and I'd be happy to answer any questions that you have, even about my grandma. So go for it. Who's first? Raise your hand.
If anybody has a question, go to the mic so everybody can hear.
Yeah. Or if you don't want to go to the mics, just scream it and I will repeat it. That's also an option. Please don't be shy. I went to Newfoundland a few weeks ago and they weren't shy. I love that half of you know what that means. Oh, tell you about grandma. Okay, so as I mentioned, so the question was, tell me about grandma. So as I mentioned, my mom didn't tell my grandma that I was gay. So that summer of grade 9, I went to Winnipeg, where my grandma lives, and I spent the week with grandma with the intention of telling her myself, because me and my grandma are super close. In fact, ever since I was born, my grandma and I have spent a week together every summer, and I'm like old now, so I still do it, and she's awesome. And so yeah, so anyway, I went to spend a week with grandma as usual, and I wanted to tell her myself because it meant a lot to me, and we went to the ballet, right? And we both were checking out the same dancer, and I didn't tell her. So then we went to the art gallery, and there was an exhibit by Kent Monkman, who's an Indigenous famous artist who will actually help us open our gallery in 3 years, our museum in 3 years, and I didn't tell her. And on the third day, Grandma was like, you know what we should do? because she's my churchy grandma. My mom and my dad and my brother have sort of fallen out of the church, which I guess I'll tell you that later. But my grandma and I are super churchy, and my grandma and I decided to make pie for the homeless shelter because sometimes craft dinner doesn't cut it. Sometimes you need a slice of pie. So we were making pie, and my grandma thought it'd be funny if she threw flour in my face, which it was. And so I went to have a shower. I came out of the shower. I got dressed, and my grandma hangs up the phone, and she says, I was talking to your mother, and she says, you have something to tell me. What is it? Now, in this exact moment, my grandma wasn't just hanging up the phone. My grandma was cutting up the pie into beautiful slices. She hates how the homeless shelter cuts the pie into narrow, thin slices. And she thinks if you're going to get a slice of pie, you should get a slice of pie. So grandma's cutting up the pie with the sharpest knife she can find. She hangs up the phone, and she points it at me, and she points the knife at me, and she says, your mother says you have something to tell me. What is it? I put up a defensive stance, and I say, Grandma, I'm gay. Put down the knife. My grandma points the knife at me, and she's like, I knew it. I knew it. And I'm like, Grandma, don't be dramatic. So my grandma puts down the knife, and this is exactly what she says word for word. She says, I knew it. You know, the day you were born, you came out of your mother's pie, and you were waving your hands like a Broadway dancer, and I looked at your father, and I said, this kid is going to be such a gay. And I'm like, really? And she's like, oh, yeah. And I'm like, all right, well, let's drop off the pies at the homeless shelter. Let's pick up some Julia Roberts movies, and let's just chill out. So Grandma says, no. You need to text your father and tell him he owes me $40. So, yeah. So Dad paid for us to go for dessert and watch, you know, a screen movie, not just a TV movie. So, yeah. Yeah. Place your bets early. Anyone? Oh, yeah. And so then I should also mention, I still do go to church. I'm a good Catholic, which means I go to church 3 times a year, Christmas, Easter, and my birthday. Yeah, but I have to be honest, I made a really dear friend in the United Church. I don't know if you know Reverend Jenny Leslie. She's an openly queer woman in Ottawa. She runs Kitchissippi United, and most of the time I try and make it to her church when I'm not traveling across the country. Although, if I am in your town over a weekend, which my partner and my dog don't like me to do, but if I am, I probably sit in the back and listen or sing along. So if you do see me, say hi. Any other questions? I think we have time for one more.
Jeremy, do you ever go back to Sault Ste. Marie? Is your family still there? And what happens to the people who were your peers?
Yeah, that's a great question. Okay, so my parents don't live in Sault Ste. Marie anymore. They live in Peterborough. My mom moved out of there after my brother graduated, and they moved to Peterborough because my dad got another job opportunity. I do get to go back because a lot of my friends live there. In fact, the 6 friends that I mentioned, we're all still friends, obviously not in the same way, and we're not obviously as close. And actually, Elizabeth, who many people ask about on a regular basis because y'all be gossipy just like me. She actually, about 6 months later, after embarrassing me in front of the school, she actually apologized. And when she apologized, I realized that I had 2 choices in that moment. I could either forgive her or I could hate her forever. And I forgave her because I knew that one day I would hurt someone else. And if I expected that person to forgive me, I needed to learn to forgive her. So yeah, we became friends. She actually helped design the logo and the banner. And while we may appear like a mega LGBTQ organization with lots of money, I assure you we're super poor. My office is in a classroom with the other 12 people I work with. I take phone calls in the hallway just like everybody else. So yeah, please do consider getting involved with the work that we're doing. Check out the website to find out more. And please let us know if we can ever help you. We have office space in Ottawa. And if you're ever dropping off to Ulster parliamentarians, I'm looking at Linda, who I can't see in the audience. But to all of you out there, if you ever need help, we're obviously happy to help out with what you're doing. We are so inspired by the work of the United Church and all of your ministries and all of your missions. And I am incredibly grateful for the spaces that you create, not just for me, but for other LGBTQ youth and other people who are struggling. And I think what you're doing is amazing. So please keep up the good work. If you ever want me to talk or do presentations, it's all free. By the way, that's why we're super poor, because we don't charge for anything. Should have mentioned that at the beginning. Yeah, we don't. All of our work, all of our presentations, everything is free except for our Toronto Gala, which is a fundraiser, and our teachers conference, because the Safe Schools budget in every school allows for teachers to go and they pay for like their food and that's it. But everything else we do, all 52 day-long conferences, all workshops, all presentations, including the ones that you'd want me to deliver to a congregation on a Sunday. Oh God, Jenny. They're all free, so I'm always happy to help. Thank you all so much for your time. If you have any questions, I'm sticking around all night. Unfortunately, I have to catch a flight at 6 a.m. because my friend is tired of taking care of my dog and my boyfriend is still in Winnipeg with his parents. So I'm gone at 6 a.m. tomorrow. I'm so, so sorry. Please have a great time at the photo shoot and enjoy the other keynotes and presentations. And again, I'm here all night if you have any questions. My cell phone and my email are all on the website. Please don't hesitate to ever text me or email me. I know people probably say that to you, but I actually genuinely mean it. Like, message me, I will answer, I promise. And thank you all so much for all the work you're doing, and I hope we can get involved more. Thanks. Thank you, Joyce. You know, can you, wait, stay standing. I want to take a picture. My mom, my partner doesn't always believe I get standing ovations, so. Yeah. Okay, got it, thanks.
Oh, wow. We were inspired this morning by our very Reverend Gary. We talked about holy moments. We talked about testimonials. We talked about the power of the Spirit. And some colleagues of mine in Toronto Conference, as we were chatting several months ago, said, wow, we had this guy come and he was awesome. And I said, well, who was that? Wow, you got to get Jeremy to come. I know you have an initiative in London Conference, and you've got to get Jeremy to come because he speaks from the heart and he tells our story. I am ever so grateful.
Pleasure.
Ever so grateful. And you can tell by the reception here that you have touched hearts, touched souls, touched minds. You don't do anything for free in London Conference, my friend.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
And I want to commit to you, as I saw the posting on Facebook about your building, we're not going to send you stuff. We're going to bring you some busloads of people.
Oh,
to
awesome.
celebrate, okay?
Excellent.
Thank
so
you so much.
2021, save the date.
You got it.
Thank
We're
you,
on
friends.
it. Thank you.
Thanks so much. Of course. You want to start? Stop. Oh, yes, of course.
Okay. Speaking is fine and go.
Spirit God, be our breath, be our song. Go through
we're welcoming to the stage now our Affirm Task Group. Thank you, Connie. So I invite you to share with us now.
So we've heard about the Spirit moving, and we've heard about the Spirit calling, and our responsibility to follow the call of the Spirit. I want to take you back a few years or so ago to a call of the Spirit. You probably just heard this story a couple of weeks ago, but I want to tell it in a different way today. So this is just after Pentecost, as we are right now. The disciples have all been sent out to teach about Jesus. The Spirit has called them. And so we have Philip. Philip was doing just fine in Samaria. Thank you very much. Life was preaching Jesus, the Messiah, to the Samaritans, of all people, and converting them like crazy. He was casting out demons, he was healing people, and there was great joy in the city. Things were going on so well that the Samaritan church was growing so fast that Peter and John decided that they need to go over and deal with the overflow crowds. They were just having such crazy, huge success. So with that happening, the Lord decided to reappoint Philip to a different faith community. And God issues a call telling Philip to go south to the road, the desert road that goes from Jerusalem to Gaza. Philip follows the Spirit down the desert in the middle of the afternoon. But wait, the road is not totally deserted. Here comes a wagon, and someone is riding it and is reading it aloud. He is reading the book of Isaiah. Philip runs up to the wagon, and hearing the passage being read aloud, he asks the Ethiopian if he understands what he is reading. This influential, powerful man responds with a child's innocence and honesty. How can I, he says, if no one will explain it to me? Whereupon he invites Philip to climb aboard the wagon and sit next to him and explain the book of Isaiah as they travel along. Now, Philip is no stranger to preaching to outcasts or people on the very edge of the dominant culture. He was just come from Samaria, land of the infidels, apostates, and fake Jews, and the home of the Good Samaritan, untouchables in the eyes of good Palestinian Jews. And the Ethiopian is a different thing altogether. First of all, he's black. Second of all, he's a foreigner from the very edge of the world. And he is a castrato, imperfect, unable to keep the commandment to go forth, be fruitful, and multiply. Not even allowed into the temple for worship. Philip pushes all of that to the side and climbs aboard the wagon to sit next to the Ethiopian official. Philip explains the passage to the man and takes the opportunity to tell the story of Jesus with his new companion. Not much later, they come to a pool of water, and the eunuch lays down a challenge to Philip. What can stand in my way of being baptized? We can imagine the reasons running through his mind. Shall the color of my skin stand in the way? Shall my country of origin serve as a barrier between me and Jesus? Will my accent or the strangeness of my language slam the door of baptism for me? Shall my vague sexual orientation exclude me again? No, nothing will keep this from happening. We are told that he ordered the carriage to stop, and there, in the pool, Philip baptized the man. And he became a full member of the Christian movement, who went on his way rejoicing, even as Philip went on his way, spreading the good news of Jesus Christ and preaching as he went. The Ethiopian went on to grow where he was transplanted, rooted in the life of Jesus and the love of God. When individuals approach London Conference to serve on the executive, apply for a position, to join a committee, to participate in an event, what goes through their mind? Are they wondering whether it will be as before, when who you wear mattered more than your skills and ability? Will my sexual orientation be a barrier? Will my sexual identity be a barrier? Will the color of my skin be a barrier? Will my heritage be a barrier? Will my native language be a barrier? Will my station in life be a barrier? No one should ever have to deal with those concerns when they look at London Conference. We need to create a place where individuals are truly able to grow where they are planted. Thank you.
Thank you, Connie. And we are going to have some table group time, and I have a few questions that you can share with your table mate. First question is, do you have barriers that stood in the way of life? Give you a few minutes to talk amongst yourself. Do you have barriers that stood in the way of life? The next question is, how did you not respond to your barriers? So you can continue your conversation. How did you not respond to your barriers? The last question is, have you ever helped someone with a barrier? Have you helped someone with a barrier?
We hope you'll continue to ponder some of the issues that your table discussions have brought up. Tonight, your Affirm task group brings to you a proposal. For more than 2 years now, we have been engaged as London Conference in conversation and education and contemplation around the work of becoming an affirming conference. As your affirming task group, Michelle Down, Connie Ellis, Kenji Marui, Anju Park, Harry Stewart, and myself have taken on the commission of moving us all forward through research, focus on the marginalized among us, and concern for the provision of safety and equity for all. You've been a part of the process through table work at conferences and other conversations. Your feedback was carefully recorded and considered in bringing us to this point in time. Out of your work at the last annual general meeting, clearly came a list of those things that we as a conference most value in terms of inclusivity, diversity, and equitable access and treatment among us. And those values can be found in our proposal, which is in the delegate handbook on pages 39 through 43. The values are found in the appendix of our proposal in that handbook. From those value statements came a vision statement, which was sent by the Affirm task group to the conference executive for approval. Safety, sanctuary, and unconditional love. Striving to be faithful followers of Jesus in our time and place, London Conference will continue to remove barriers to participation in the life and work of the conference and society, committing itself to be open to the Spirit, resisting all forms of oppression. We welcome and celebrate people of any sexual orientation and gender identity, and all others who are marginalized. This statement was approved by conference executive. As part of our requirements to become an affirming ministry, we were required to write such a statement reflecting the particular community we are a part of and the gifts and commitments that we bring to our area of ministry and the world. Understanding that we make such a commitment, such a statement, on our own behalf as a conference, and do not presume that others in individual churches take a similar action. Each part of the church's conciliar system has the right to make its own decisions. The next part of our work, also required by Affirm United, is a continuing plan of action for the ministry. Our plan of action is what is outlined in the proposal as you have it before you in your delegate's handbook. Tonight, we will only highlight and the proposal pieces and offer table group time for your questions about it and your careful consideration of it. The designation of this conference as an affirming ministry is so much more than a name. it is for many of us a home, a heart, and as our vision statement expresses, the promise of safety, of sanctuary, and of unconditional love. And so recognizing that the church governance structure is currently undergoing restructuring, and in 7 months that London Conference will no longer exist as an entity, recognizing that London Conference can only make commitments for London Conference, recognizing that currently Affirm United maintains that all conferences and presbyteries presently designated as affirming ministries will not carry their designation into their new regions, and their work must be undertaken anew. We are proposing that the conference executive, staff, and task groups, working bodies, and members commit to working toward fulfilling their mission statement by the following manner. Our first slide is continuing to remove barriers to participation in the life and work of London Conference. We will do this in various ways, through education, looking at existing policies and forms, through advocacy, sensitivity training, and the provision of resources wherever we can. One of the key components of this portion is the appointing of a minister of diversity to the conference executive. This person would act as a conduit of information and would look at issues of diversity. The second point of our action plan is continuing to remove barriers to participation in society. As a conference, we will have a public face in our communities, speaking out and advocating where we can in issues of diversity and inclusivity, and providing places of gathering that are encouraging and supportive. The third point, continuing to be open to the Spirit through listening to voices old and new, and being that visible presence for others. The fourth point, continuing to welcome and celebrate people of any sexual orientation and gender identity by providing support to individuals, communities of faith, and others who are seeking to follow the path of inclusion, and to accompany others who are traveling a difficult path in life. And finally, continuing to celebrate and acknowledge diversity by continuing to engage in open and honest discussion, seeking reconciliation, recognizing the unique gifts, expressions, and needs of the LGBTQ2S+ community, seeking them out and weaving them into the full tapestry of faith, liturgy, and polity of the United Church as shared within the London Conference. While this important work essentially falls upon London Conference, its committees, task groups, executive, staff, and members, it's vital to remain in constant contact with the LGBTQ2S+ community within and outside the church, to be aware of its needs, wants, challenges, and joys, to ensure our vision of safety, sanctuary, and unconditional love. And while it's recognized that this is an ambitious proposal, it's also recognized that London Conference has set affirming as a priority. If we're not prepared to take on the work of safety, sanctuary, and unconditional love for all, we're not prepared to be an affirming ministry. And so in these next moments, I would offer to you the table group time to discuss the contents of this ambitious proposal, to make note of any ongoing questions and concerns to bring to the floor tomorrow. Will there be ample time for discussion? But use the collective wisdom of the table to work through as much as you can, what you like, what you don't like, any questions that you have, any time to engage with the material and see how it blossoms within you, see where it takes you. So take that time now and use it as you will.
President Joyce, if I could grab the court's attention for a minute. One of the questions we were asked is how many congregations are affirming already? And I'm going to ask your indulgence because we might not have the full list. It is on the affirming website, but if we go from west to east, we would know that Tecumseh United in just outside of Windsor in Essex, and then Riverside United Church here in London, First St. Andrews, and Trinity United Church in London. Yeah.
Huron Shores.
Huron Shores in Grand Bend, and Avondale in Stratford. So those are the ones we know. If I missed anyone. Oh, I'm so sorry, which was our very first affirming congregation, so my apologies to Victoria Ave. They were the very first affirming congregation in our conference, and they've really led the way for lots of us. That's the ones that we know of. If you can think of others, just come up and tell us, and we'll announce it a bit later.
folks. Thank you for your consideration of our proposal, for your discernment, and for all of the careful thought that you're putting into what has been put before you. It's important work. It's been done over a long period of time. And again, I would ask that you overnight and into tomorrow, please consider this proposal carefully and prayerfully, or it would be far worse to vote in the affirmative and not be prepared to live it out than to vote against becoming an affirming conference. So thank you once again for all of your consideration, and I'll look forward to hearing the discussion, the questions, and all that comes from it tomorrow. Thank you.
President Joyce, just before the affirming task group steps down, I think several of them have already, so I'll maybe ask them to stand where they are. This is work that they have taken on for us as a conference when we raised the desire to explore this. They have carried the work exclusively without staff support. They've done it on their own. They've shared their stories, they've been vulnerable, they've been honest, and in every conversation they have led the executive and the annual meeting of conference. They've touched our hearts and invited us into a new understanding of loving community. No matter what we decide, we can never thank them enough for the risk they took to take on this work for us, and we are so much better for the conversations they've enabled us to have. So many, many thanks.
If the Spirit so leads you, I invite you to stand. Feel free to clap on the 2 and the 4 and dance. Places I've never been before, and open doors.
Thank you, music team. It is indeed my honor to introduce to you Reverend Karen Georgia Thompson from the United Church of Christ. She has a little job. It's called Minister for Ecumenical and Interfaith Relations in the Office of the General Minister and President of the United Church of Christ. That is a longer title than you have.
That's true.
It was wonderful to be able to dine with her last night in Temesford and enjoy the play. And as we chatted, I said, how much do you travel? Oh, 80% of my time. Wow. We are so blessed to have you, to bring your prophetic voice. I'm a huge fan of your writing. Please help me welcome Karen Georgia. Thank you.
So the nice part about technology is that when it works, and when it fails you, it's just epic. And I'm having one of those moments, but we're just gonna work into this in a very graceful and grace-filled way. So I wanna read a scripture that I chose for this moment, and I'm gonna confess that I have no Wi-Fi in here, so I went to the bookstore and took a picture of the page that I wanted. They actually thought I was going to buy a Bible. I said, no, I just want to take a picture of the page. So from Isaiah chapter 43, verses 18 and 19, it says, do not remember the former things, or consider the things of old. I am about to do a new thing. Now it springs forth. Do you not perceive it? London Conference, do you not perceive it? God is doing a new thing, a wonderful thing in this place. So just in case you haven't noticed, I'm going to tell you about it. And since I'm a storyteller, I'm just going to tell you the stuff that I want to tell you anyway. So I'm going to start with this little fact about myself. I love spring. Now I know up here sometimes it takes a while for spring to come, but I love spring. I'm not a winter person, alas. And a lot of that has to do with the fact that I wasn't born in winter country. I was born in Kingston, Jamaica. It lives in my blood. So I lived in Lakewood, Ohio for like many years, and I lived right on Lake Erie. And I tell you, when the lake froze, I stayed home. It was a sign that it was too cold outside. So I live for spring, because spring is a sign that summer is coming. And that's when life happens. See, my sister over here, she's nodding. She's like, mm-hmm. If you can't hear her, she's saying amen. We're just people of the summertime. But one of the things that I love about spring is the fact that spring has a story to tell, right? I suppose all the seasons do, because when I lived in Lakewood, Ohio, and I would look outside my window, the frozen lake had a story to tell, but that's not what we want to talk about. And the leaves that were missing from the trees, that was a story too. And the wind that would howl, but that's not the story we want to talk about. The story of spring is the story of new life. So for me, one of the things about spring is when you look outside and you see those little buds on the trees, you just hope that winter is like a little gone and that they'll survive. And usually the first thing that shows up in the yard are those hearty tulips. And they come with their reds and their yellows, and it's so beautiful because the greenery starts coming back with spring. And so as I sat here listening to just everything that's happened this morning, including going to Gary's workshop, this morning, I thought there's signs of spring. Bloom where you're planted. Well, if you're going to bloom where you're planted, you want to see some signs that you're blooming, right? And that's what spring is about, right? You see these signs that spring is coming. The leaves are coming, and the little buds on the trees, and the people who decide that it's okay to not wear coats anymore. And then people start wearing their flip-flops, and it's only like 50 degrees outside because they're just done with winter. But they're signs. And so what I found today were the signs that you are blooming where you are planted. The signs are in the stories, because stories begin to tell the tale of where blooming is happening. So I heard it in the words of those who are seeking ordination and the new person who's coming in. In their words, I heard hope. I heard of God's grace, and I heard of new life that's coming. I thought to myself, well, this is a sign of growth in the church. People are getting ordained. Yeah, come on. It's like those tulips right on the cusp of winter, where you look and you say, oh my gosh, it's here, it's happening. And then other things start to grow as well. And so I heard it in the report of United Church Women. Isn't it just wonderful what's happening? Oh my goodness, come on now. It's wonderful to know that the work of these women is impacting in a major way. That you here in the London Conference are not just making a difference here in the conference, but that you're making a difference all across Canada. That people in your legislature know about the advocacy work that you're doing. These are signs of spring. Every season has a story to tell. Where I was sitting, we were in the north. And the north is about winter. And I know, right? The irony. But it has a story to tell. And summer has its story. And these are the seasons in the life of the church as well, and in the life of the conference. And I want to encourage you to tell your stories. We've been telling stories at the table, and as I've been here, I've been overhearing stories because I live for other people's stories. I'm a writer, I can't help it. And if you don't give me material, I just make it up on my own anyway. So it's important that we tell story, because the story is where we begin to hear. The story are like flowers budding. The stories are like a bouquet of flowers. And so each story becomes a vibrant part of making this collective picture about what's going on and what's happening. And as Jeremy came and told his story, I could hear in the laughter those who understood his pain. And I could hear in the laughter those who were thinking, we need to do something about that. That's a part of the story too. And what he told also was a story about the United Church of Canada. In his story was your story. A story of making a difference. A story too about advocacy. A story about the rights of LGBTQ individuals. but it's also a story about advocating for human rights. Because that's something that you believe in with all your hearts. It's something that you're passionate about. There's something that says who we are and who we understand ourselves to be as children of God is also about understanding that we are all, every single one of us, made in the image of God. And so it's for that reason that we sit here, I believe. It's not because we didn't come because like Cheryl-Ann's like really nice. Well, we came because of that too. At least that's why I came. She
That's
said,
not a universal opinion. I just want you to know that.
well, let me use some I statements. I came because Cheryl-Ann asked me to come. But I believe that a part of what has called us here is our commitment and our understanding of our own call to service in the work and life of the church. That all of us, every one of us out here, whether we are ordained or not, have found ourselves. Our story is a part of this larger bouquet. We have found ourselves to this place because we believe that who we are, not just individually, but collectively, can and will make a difference in this world in which we live. And so whatever the seasons are, there's something to be said about the life of the church. But in this moment, what I want to ask you to hold on to and to think about is spring. Think about spring. Think about the stories that are present in the life of the London Conference. Now, 3 years ago, I was at General Council in Newfoundland, and I was asked to do the theological reflection. But it just so happened I wasn't scheduled to do the theological reflection. At least now, today, I had time to think about it. And one of the things that really impacted my time at General Council in 2015 was Color Outside the Lines. I love that song. And one of the things that I love about that, and thank you all for singing it, like, it's like my favorite song. It's not in our hymnal. And so whenever I want to sing it, I have to go on like YouTube or something and find like somebody who's like really singing it like the right kind of, upbeat. Because clapping on the 2 and the 4. Everybody doesn't like sing it like that. So I have to find like the right YouTube, video and turn it up. But one of the things that I like about Color Outside the Lines is it's an invitation, right? Because this idea of blooming where we're planted is actually an invitation to risk. It is not easy to bloom where you're planted. It really is not easy to be exactly who you are. Because for some of us, we really have to figure out how to fit into places, and we have to learn how to color inside the lines, right? So coloring inside the lines sometimes is about the status quo, and this song invites us to think outside the box, right? To live outside of those lines. Because what I want to tell you is that this idea of coloring inside the lines is where we've been for a long time, and it has not been helpful. Coloring outside the lines has supported poverty. Coloring inside the lines has supported a lot of the status quo that has gotten us to where we are as a church and as a people. And it takes courage to color outside the lines. It takes courage and it takes risk. It takes courage to stand up to bullying. It takes courage to stand up and say, we are going to be an affirming conference. It takes courage to say that we are going to find ourselves in the halls of our MPs and our senators, and we're going to speak up and we're going to make a difference. It takes courage to make dolls. It takes courage to pack your car and drive across country because there's a mission and a plan and there's something that you believe in. And it takes courage to embrace change. And I know that change is here in this moment as well. I hear you talking about it. And I hang around United Church of Canada folks enough to know what it means. And change is scary. But that's what we're invited to do when we're invited to bloom where we're planted. I want to believe that we are scattered seed. I really loved to hear about the tumbleweed today. Anybody else like the story about tumbleweed? Yeah, you know. Come on now, tumbleweed. What it reminded me of is that things aren't always neat and orderly, right? That the scattering of seed is not about an ordered garden. It's not about having those nice little beds with everything framed out. That's not what this is about. I believe that God has scattered us as seed. And that as people who are scattered in so many different places, to be salt to the earth and light to the world, that in these varied places where we've been planted and we start blooming, we begin to color the world in this magnificent way with our presence. And so it all comes together for me in this wonderful way that says we need to take risk. We need to live out loud. We need to color outside the lines. And all of that is facilitated with this wonderful gift of the Holy Spirit. Because none of that we can do by ourselves. God is doing a new thing. And we're only able to be a part of that new thing because we understand ourselves as being filled with the presence and the power of the Holy Spirit. It's a beautiful thing. Do you perceive it, London Conference? Do you perceive it? God is saying, behold, I am doing a new thing. And here's the thing. It's a question. Do you not perceive it? Because if you don't yet perceive it, the rest of the text says, watch it spring forth. So if you don't see it, believe it. It's coming. Signs of spring are everywhere. Stories are present. I hear them. You hear them. That bouquet keeps getting larger and larger. This multicolored array of flowers that we are, that you are, that are the wonderful, fabulous stories of all the things that are happening here in the London Conference. And if you don't believe me, read the report. I read the report. That's what you do when you come to these things and they tell you have to be the theological reflector. You start looking for material. So read the report, because the report also says there are wonderful things that are happening here. Behold, I'm doing a new thing. Watch it spring forth. Amen. Amen.
All right. Amen, Karen. Amen. Are we ready to bloom where we're planted? Are you ready to bloom where we are planted? You don't sound like you're ready to bloom. Okay, somebody bigger than you and I. And stand as you're able. Who made the mountains? Who made the tree? Who made the rivers go to the sea? And who hung the moon in the starry sky? Somebody bigger than you and I. Who made the flowers bloom in the spring? Who writes the song for the robin to sing? And who sends the rain when the earth is dry? Somebody bigger than you and I. He lights the way when the road is long, keeps you company, with love to guide you. He walks beside you, just like he walks with me. When I am weary, filled with despair, who gives me courage to go on from there? And who gives me faith that will never die? Somebody bigger than you and I. And water flowing from the mountains. Water flowing from the mountains, water flowing o'er the earth. Water comes to us so precious, living water gives us birth. Drink deep, the source of life. Drink deep and know, for living water sings, and living water brings the love that makes our spirit grow. Water rushing down the rivers, water rushing to the sea. Water comes to us so precious, living water makes us free. Drink deep, the source of life. Drink deep and know, for living water sings, and living water brings the love that makes our spirit grow. Water springing from the dry place, water springing in the sun. Water comes to us so precious, living water for each one. Drink deep, the source of life. Drink deep and know, for living water sings, and living water brings the love that makes our spirit grow.
I was asked to close our time together, and my instructions were to start with a poem, move into a commission, and wind her up with a benediction, and make it short. So, I can do this. I can do this. This is a poem which is quite appropriate, I think, for our time. It's called A Prayer Among Friends, which is what I'm sensing for myself and what I'm sensing from the energy all around. It's a poem written by John Daniel. And he writes, Among the many other wonders of our lives, this one, we live with one another. And so let us walk together in the light of this unlikely world, which is not ours for long. May we spend generously the time we have been given. May we enact our responsibilities as thoroughly as we enjoy our pleasures. May we see with clarity, and may we seek a vision that embraces all beings, all my relations, and may we honor the mystery that is beyond our sight. May we hold in our hands the gift of good work and bring it forth whole, as we ourselves have been brought forth whole by a power we praise, brought forth to this one earth, this homeland of all we love. Commission. Friends, life is short, and we do not have much time to gladden the hearts of those we travel with. So be swift to love and make haste to be kind. Benediction. The hand of God to hold you, the grace of God enfold you. For the love that dreamed and formed you still surrounds you here today. The light of God be with you, beside, above, and within you. The light that shines to guide all of us home to the loving heart of God. Amen. Go in peace.
We've got, hang on, whoa. We've got a song here, and then we just got a couple of announcements, reminders for you, so here we go.
Okay, time to clap on the 2 and the 4 again. And please stand as you're able. I'm gonna live so God can use me anywhere, Lord, anytime. I'm gonna live so God can use me anywhere, Lord, anytime. I'm gonna work so God can use me anywhere, Lord, anytime. I'm gonna work so God can use me anywhere, Lord, anytime. I'm gonna pray so God can use me anywhere, Lord, anytime. I'm gonna pray so God can use me anywhere, Lord, anytime. I'm gonna sing so God can use me anywhere, Lord, anytime. I'm gonna sing so God can use me anywhere, Lord, anytime. Amen. All God's people said?
Amen.
Announcements.
Here's Vanna. Vanna's strutting her stuff. Aren't you glad we're ending the day? Woo! There is no wine on the patio, Vanna. Thank goodness for that, eh? We have time to spend on the patio tonight, if you so desire. Smudging service tomorrow morning at 7:45. But please wear your T-shirts tomorrow for the picture. Have a great night. Thank you. Bus tickets. There are bus